Hey, what's up? This is Amazing Gaming, back with another video on my channel. Today's video is LiesOfP, a fantastic Souls-like, but not for everyone. Okay, so this video is about LiesOfP. I guess he's gonna go in depth on like what the game is about. I don't know what's up with this beginning part of the video, but we're gonna dive into it. When it comes to LiesOfP, I love the game. It was probably the only game that really made me like step away from Elden Ring and just constantly keep playing it. I think it's the best Souls like game that's not like Souls. Like that's not like FromSoft. But yeah, let's dive in and see how this person feels.
As someone who's probably played more Souls likes than any other person on the planet, talking about them is tricky and often unfair to the developers. More than any other genre of game, Souls likes invite a lot of comparison. It's in the name after all, Souls like. And those comparisons usually aren't the most favorable or fair because they're put up against From.
Yeah, a lot of the games that are supposed to be like Souls like now don't bash me because I think they redid this game, but Lords of the Fallen, I didn't really like that. I started playing it, but I stopped. What else is another game? Lords of the Fallen, the only one I can just think of off the top of my mind. Dragon's Dogma. It's not a Souls like, but I thought it was gonna be kind of sort of like that. I ended up playing that for a little bit, but stopped playing that too. But yeah, Souls like games, it's kind of hard to recreate that. But Liza P did do a good job.
Software and the Soulsborne games. Even if there isn't a direct comparison being made, a lot of people will compare them, at the very least, on a subconscious level. I think most people would consider FromSoft's games to be the pinnacle of the genre, the gold standard, and
Yeah,
as such, it's
definitely.
usually not possible to go toe to toe against them. Like, you can make a great Souls like, but at the end of the day, you're probably not really competing with Bloodborne or Elden Ring. They're in a different weight class, and
Now, one thing I will say, I did not like Bloodborne. It was okay, but I'm not. Matter of fact, I'm not gonna say I didn't like it because I did, but I didn't like the fact that you didn't get health. Like you had to like farm health. That's the only thing that made me like just like I'm over this. I hate that you had to do that. I wish that once you die, you just respawn. It don't even have to be a lot. If they would have gave me like 3 or 4 for the whole game, I'd have been fine. Like that's fine with me. But I hate that it just goes to zero and then you have to like beat people to kind of like farm health, the little blood vials. That's the only reason why I didn't like Bloodborne. But overall, it was a pretty good game.
that's okay. Then we got Lies of P. This game is
Now I remember people used to say that Lies of P reminded them of Bloodborne, but I think Lies of P is way better than Bloodborne. Don't attack me in the comments, but I do think Lies of P is better than Bloodborne, and Lies of P did come out later, so that might be influencing it too. Like why I feel that way. They had a little bit more time to, perfect the craft. Like without Bloodborne, there might not have been any Lies of P.
is very good. In fact, it's so good and so polished and so thoughtfully made that you can compare it directly to FromSoft and it still comes out looking pretty all right. In
Yeah.
terms of quality, Lies of P is now up there in my personal rankings of Souls likes. Only a few games make it, like actual FromSoft games and Neo 2, for example. If you want a Souls like experience that's close to FromSoft, but not literally FromSoft, this is the closest
Yeah.
I've seen a game
This is
get.
the
I
game.
realize that's extremely high praise, but I love the 30 hours it took me to beat the game, and I think the footage mostly speaks for itself. The Korean based developer.
It took me way more than 30, I believe, for sure. But I agree. I think if you love like Elden Ring, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, if you love those type of games, Lies of P is the next game you need to play. Even the story, like I think the story might be better. Like now, I got a little bit more invested into Elden Ring because like their story because I played it so much. But Lies of P does have a good story.
At Neo is really did their homework of studying FromSoft and creating Lies of P. There's a secret sauce to these games in terms of design and presentation, and if even one thing is off, it can dramatically drag down the experience. Yet, despite that, Neo has pulled it off and fucking crushed it. I'm a little surprised by the overall response from critics, though. They're generally positive, but I think they're still selling it short as just another decent Souls-like as opposed to the excellent game I believe it to be.
On that note, I think it was because it was so many Souls like games coming out at the time that the writers probably had fatigue. But I do think of that whole group. I think Lies of P is probably the best one.
Simply don't see Souls likes on this level from companies other than FromSoft. If you're a fan
Yeah.
of the genre, this is one of the rare must plays. There is a caveat though. This game can get incredibly difficult and has questionable difficulty spikes. Like, straight up, I think this game might be too hard for some people, even if they played other FromSoft games. And I want to make this warning crystal clear so as not to mislead people into buying a game that will make them miserable. I totally understand people who might quit this game less than halfway through. I really do. You do kind of have to get good, as the kids say, and be willing to fail a lot.
Yeah.
And stuff like range builds or online co-op aren't options to make things easier against bosses that demand you learn every single attack. You need to meet this game on its own terms without.
But now they did it to where it's a easy, medium, and hard mode. Like when I first played LiesOfP, it was no changing. You had to just go on hard. But I think they did an update, so they let you go down on it. I guess to attract more people to play the game. So if you feel like the Souls like games are too hard, you can do easy mode on this. When I played it, there was no easy mode, so I just even the DLC, I just kept it at hard mode because that's what I've been playing on, and I enjoy games a little bit more like that. Well, I enjoy Souls games more like that.
Not expect it to be just another Soulslike or making the wrong assumptions about what playstyle the game wants from you. In that sense, this game won't be for everyone, but if you're patient and willing to learn, I think you're going to have a good time. After lots of struggling, this game did eventually click for me, and the result is the praise you're seeing me give it now. But I understand how someone who never fully clicked with the combat system would probably disagree with me. I'll go more into that topic later, though. For now,
The
let's
combat
break
system
LiesOfP
isn't that
down
hard.
piece by piece so I give a clear picture of what the
I think once you realize that it's more so parrying than dodging, you're good.
this game is, why it's unique, and how it succeeds, while also addressing some critiques and giving tips along the way. The elevator pitch for Lies of P is Bloodborne meets Sekiro meets Twinkified Pinocchio in a game with FromSoft levels of production value
I
and
agree.
polish. He plays Pinocchio himself, a puppet who has been granted life shortly after the outbreak of the
Matter of fact, I'm not gonna spoil that, but it's a little asterisk on there. Him being Pinocchio.
Puppet Frenzy, an event that caused almost all puppets to go crazy with bloodlust as they tear apart the city of Kratz, a setting inspired by the Bellepoque era of the late 19th century. On top of that, puppets aren't the only issue, as zombies are also running around.
Yeah, this threw me off too. It got like a little bit of Resident Evil type of vibe to it. That threw me off, but I not in a bad way. It just I wasn't prepared for that. You've been fighting like deranged puppets, and then it went to like zombie types. But yes, the visual design of this game is wonderful. Like it kind of remind me of when you just open up that door in Elden Ring and you just the limb graves thing sign pops up when you enter into Limgrave. That's what this remind like that's what it remind me of when they showed that little background of like crop.
Around. Pinocchio has his work cut out for him. As ridiculous as this premise sounds, there's actually a tremendous amount of respect for the source material of the original Pinocchio story by author Carlo Collodi from 1883. Like, basically every character and plot point is referenced in one way or another. For example, you got the cricket sidekick of Gemini inside your lantern, and of course you have characters like Geppetto. The fun part is that there's a twist or
I did not trust Geppetto from the beginning. The moment I met him, the moment they introduced us to him, I was like, nah, this guy, he got a hidden agenda. He evil. And I kept that tone the whole time. Every time I talked to him, I was like, I roll like, yeah, right, Geppetto.
fun adaptation to every idea from the original story. The
And
biggest
my
example would
intuition
be
was correct.
Pinocchio and lying. In the original story, lying is bad, Pinocchio's nose grows, and he needs to be truthful to become a quote unquote real boy. In Lies of P, this concept is flipped on its head to explore the idea of humanity within puppets. Maybe lying isn't so bad. After all, lying is one of the most human things a person can do. Maybe the path to being a real boy isn't telling the truth. There's a lot more to this, but the way everything is woven together is genuinely incredibly well done and entertaining.
That's one thing I regret, but I ended up doing it my second playthrough. But the first time I told the truth. I don't know what I was on, but I was like, oh, I think they want us to tell the truth. You ain't supposed to lie. But I wish I would have lied the first playthrough. That way I could have got the golden lie at the end. Which I ended up getting it, but it wasn't in my first playthrough.
I didn't expect to care about the characters or story nearly as much as I did, and I even found myself reading all of the scraps of paper I picked up that had world building lore on them. It
Nah,
was
I
fun
ain't doing
unraveling
that.
mysteries and learning about the side characters. In general, though, it's a more direct form of storytelling than your typical FromSoft game. And while I've seen some people critique that, I think it suits the story they're trying to tell very well. Now, as much as I'd love to go into a literary analysis of the themes this game explores, I know that's
Nah,
not
go
my role.
ahead. I love
Let's
it.
talk about the game itself and get into the gameplay. If you played even a single Soulsborne game, the keyword I'd use to describe Lies of P is familiar. This game is remarkably similar to what FromSoft makes. You got an Estus flask on
Yeah, it's the Stargazer is like the bonfire in the Estes Flame. And I played Lies of P in the DLC first, and it helped me out when I got to Sekiro. Because I played Sekiro after I played these games. And this definitely helped me out. Like the parrying, it was a whole lot. the mechanics of parrying got was a whole lot easier in Sekiro because I had played this game first.
Fires, corpse runs, stamina-based combat, a dodge button, challenging bosses that revolve around well-telegraphed attacks, the level up lady, a fucking poison swamp level, and much, much more. The level design, enemy layouts, and just overall game feel and pace of combat are eerily similar to an actual FromSoft game to a degree that I haven't seen before. It can be a little uncanny, and I had to remind myself that I wasn't playing something FromSoft themselves had made. This is a double-edged sword because it all works incredibly well, but there's also an argument to be made between where the line gets drawn between inspiration and straight copying. I expect some of the pushback or mixed feelings about this game to stem from this idea right here. This is a concept I think
Nah,
about a lot. It's a question I'm faced with every time I
it was different in its own way. Like they are similar. I think the feeling that you get from playing a FromSoft game, you get when you play Lies of P. But I don't think it was like a direct copy. But I don't know.
play any Souls like. So here's where I land on it. Basically, imitation and similarity on some level is simply inherent to the genre itself of Souls likes, and it's up to the developer to put their own twist on the source material to get people interested. I've played my fair share of Souls likes where I don't think they do enough to separate themselves from the pack. So believe me when I say that despite all the similarities, I think Lies of P does more than enough to carve out an identity of its own and justify its existence in a
I
big way.
hated those guys
Yes,
when I
the
first saw them.
similarities are
I hate. Oh no, I
understandable,
hate
but as
these
a whole
even more.
package, Lies of P is very much its own
I
thing.
never staggered
It's
them. How you do
made
that?
with an enormous amount of care and passion. Despite the obvious of the story and setting being unique, there's a number of mechanics that make this game stand out too. As a baseline though, Bloodborne meets Sekiro really is the best description. First, when attacking big enemies and bosses, you slowly build up a stagger meter that leads into a critical attack, but you can also perfect parry to build up that meter even more while avoiding damage.
I think the next thing they should do is put it where you can actually see, like in Sekiro, you know how you can see that you're about to, like you can see it when the red bar, like they're about to, you can get like a crit or something like that. I think they need to put that in the game. Or would that be too much like Sekiro? It might be what he just talking about.
Damage. Sekiro is the obvious inspiration here, as it's kind of close to how it works there. However, this game really makes you earn that stagger, because once you've parried and hit them enough, their health bar becomes outlined in white for only a small window of time, and you need to
I take back everything I said because yeah, it does turn white, so you know you about to stagger him. My fault. I forgot about that.
land a fully charged heavy attack to actually trigger the stagger. This is tough since your charged heavy attack is slow, the window you have is only a few seconds, and the enemy might not give you a clear opening. But it's a nice challenge and dynamic that's pretty unique and feels impactful and satisfying when you finally do land that big hit. In addition to parrying and dodging, blocking is an option. But again, Lies of P has a new take on the concept. In addition to costing stamina, you also lose a bit of health, but it's recoverable health. If you attack shortly after blocking, you can get that health back. You can also get some of this health back by landing a perfect parry during the same time frame. This too is tricky.
There, after doing a perfect parry when you get health, that's the whole reason why I beat the final boss in the DLC. Cause I could not. It was one attack. It was kind of like Melania's waterfowl. It's one attack that they did that I just could not get around it until I realized, like, let me just parry it. Cause I was trying to dodge it and move out of the way. I don't know why I didn't think parrying it from the beginning, but yeah, it helped out a lot in that final boss fight.
Since if you take any damage while not blocking during this window, the health is no longer recoverable via attacking. I've seen several reviewers say it's just like Bloodborne, but here you have to be far more deliberate with your blocking and subsequent health recovery as opposed to just going feral and attacking like you would after getting hit in Bloodborne. If you're careful with your blocks and don't block more than one or two hits at a time, you can easily get into a habit of recovering all or most of your health. There's also big red attacks called Fury attacks that must be parried and cause a fair bit of stagger
I
buildup
couldn't get the
if
timing
you
on the
successfully
parry
land.
attacks. I always got hit by
Isn't
it.
an option, and dodging, which in all other circumstances gives iframes, doesn't give iframes for these attacks. However, you can still avoid a lot of these moves if you get out of the way by running back or to the side, so that's good to keep in mind as another option. This was a demanding game, and I found myself pushed into utilizing each of my defensive options to succeed. I will say though that perfect parrying and guarding is pretty central to the experience, so don't make the mistake of playing it like Dark Souls or Bloodborne with too much dodging, but also don't
Yeah,
swing too hard the other way and never dodge.
and it's another thing people need to realize. Like you, like the game will give you like before you get to this boss fight, they'll give you stuff that you need. Like you'll get like stuff to put like electricity on your weapon or stuff to put like acid on your weapon. And they kind of put it, they do it in a way to let you know like this is what this boss is weak to, or this is what the enemies in this area are weak to. So you got to remember that too, so you can use those items and it'll help you in the boss fight.
dodge. Basically, just remember that despite all the comparisons I'm making, LiesOfP is ultimately its own thing, and you need to approach it as its own thing, as opposed to Bloodborne 2 or Sekiro 2. Even so, once you figure out what this game wants from you, it's fucking hard. There is some really precise timing required on parries, and it feels far less forgiving than Sekiro with a tighter window for success. When you combine that with bosses that move erratically and like to delay their attacks with huge windups and mix-ups, this is a game you're going to die a lot in. Despite my enjoyment, I think there is certainly an argument to be made for the parry window to be extended just a hair, especially when some red attacks are
Mm.
disproportionately punishing for how quickly they move.
Those red attacks
Relying
punish
on
me
reaction
every
speed will
time.
not be enough for
I
some
gotta
people.
dodge that.
You really need to internalize the timing required for parries as opposed to using purely visual cues. Back on the topic of mechanics in this game, every weapon has two Fable arts, which are basically just weapon arts, but you can activate them after building up enough blue Fable bars after landing enough hits. This is a slow process, and to balance this, the Fable arts are usually very impactful. And that brings us to one of the coolest mechanics of the game, weapon assembly. With the exception of special boss weapons, every weapon in the game can be split in half between its blade and handle, and that means you can mix and match any blade with any handle. This enables some impressive variety in player expression. Let's go over how it works. The moveset and
When it comes to that, I didn't even use it. I used the biggest sword that they give us, which it was like the arc sword or something like that. That's the sword that I used. It got me through the whole playthrough, a little bit of the DLC. Oh, the DLC has like a gun sword that you have. That's what I used in the DLC once I got it. But you had to go like pretty much through majority of the game to even get that weapon. But yeah.
and weapon scaling of any weapon is determined by the handle, but the damage and speed of the weapon is influenced by the blade. So, for example, you could stick a giant hammerhead on a dagger handle to hit harder, and it'll have the exact same dagger moveset, but it's going to be slower. Also, each blade and handle has different Fable arts, so those are also getting mixed up into interesting combos during the assembly
Mhm.
process as well. Additionally, when upgrading a weapon with upgrade materials, you only upgrade the blade. Here's a really cool consequence of this system that I think some people might overlook, and I'll illustrate it with an example that happened early on in my first playthrough.
And that's another thing too. When it comes to Souls like games, even this one, if you feel like you're not doing enough damage to a boss, it's better to level up your weapon than to actually keep dumping points into like on this one they have like strength is like motivity and technique. They have like uh different type of things that you put your attribute points in. But a lot of times if you level up the weapon, you don't have to keep dumping points into like whatever build you're trying to build. It's best to put those points into health and into like whatever the stamina or endurance, whatever it is. It's best to put some of those points into that. You'll do a lot better to do that than to actually keep dumping them into whatever build you're trying to build. Keep dumping that because most of the time you'll get a greater boost when you level up the weapon.
Through. I opened a chest and found this cool booster glaive weapon.
I'm
I
just giving y'all
it had
golden
this
nuggets
charge
of
attack that boosts you
knowledge.
forward. And I was tempted to use it, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to invest in the upgrade materials to do so. This is a common scenario in Souls games, right? You find something new, but you've already invested materials into your current weapon. Well, guess what? Here, I just took the weapon head I was already using and stuck it on the booster glaive. And boom, I got to use this new weapon without needing to invest materials just to test it out. This is kind of huge and lends itself to way more experimentation and variety than most games in the genre. Now, all that being said, the funny thing is that I didn't use this feature nearly as much as I wanted to because the non customizable boss weapons were so fucking cool. I had an umbrella rapier that expanded and could block hits,
Yeah,
a sword with a frankly silly amount of moves and mobility.
that's the one thing about Souls games. When it comes to like the special weapons that you get from bosses, normally they aren't as cool as if you just pick up like a random weapon and then just throw a different technique or something or throw a different power set to it. So, but in this game, Lies of P, it is cooler to use the special weapons.
And a scythe with an extendable whip head. The bottom line is there's just so much variety and fun designs when it comes to offensive options, and I would love to see this weapon assembly system explored further in other games in the future. Speaking of offensive options, there's also the Legion arm. It's a mechanical arm that functions very similarly to the Shinobi prosthetic from Sekiro. It lets you mix
Hmm.
in a bunch of different moves. You can drag enemies toward you, use your hand like a flamethrower, plant landmines in the ground, use a shield that explodes on impact, or just straight up have a gun with explosive bullets.
When it comes to that Legion arm, the best Legion arm is the puppet string. It can get you through the whole game, and you that's the one of like the first ones you get. I think it if the first, yeah, it might be the first one you get. That is probably the best Legion arm. I don't care. You can argue with a brick wall.
bullets. Here's another neat idea LiesOfP has. You can break the weapons of enemies if you land enough perfect parries. What's even crazier is that this applies to bosses too. This lowers the damage and reach of their attacks for the rest of the fight. I think this whole mechanic is super cool. It's a nice way of rewarding the player for playing with extra precision. This game also does.
I think it was probably one time I broke a boss's weapon. Other than that, my weapon was about to break way before then. And then when I tried to like fix it, I ended up getting hit too much and dying. But I think one fight I did break a boss's weapon.
Some fun stuff with weapon durability. Basically, your weapon loses durability over time as you attack and block, and you can repair it at any time by using your arm as a grindstone. When you're exploring levels, it honestly barely deserves to exist as a mechanic, but boss fights are where it actually gets interesting. After the first few fights, basically every boss required me to repair my weapon at least once mid-fight, and finding an opening can be difficult. This whole mechanic is justified for the moments of sheer panic that happen when you forget to repair your weapon and then it bounces off the boss mid-fight. On top of that, there's a debuff some enemies inflict called Decay, and in addition to draining your health, it rapidly drains your weapon's durability.
Yeah.
So yeah, weapon durability is something that seems pointless.
And one thing I will say, if you wanna like to help you out, if your weapon is nearly breaking whenever you're doing like fighting a boss, it would be best to put some type of like fire. Like if you was fighting this boss, fire would probably be the best thing to give him. I believe this boss is weak to fire, and a lot of these other like the later game boss, acid will work on them whenever you do it. But like if you put something like that on your weapon, you'll do more damage, and you might by the time you get to a point to where you have to like recover the durability of your weapon, the boss fight will be over.
This early on, but I like how they turned it into a mechanic that you need to pay attention to, adding just that extra bit of challenge to an already difficult game. Weapon durability could almost be entirely ignored in most Souls likes that decide to include it, so it's a nice change of pace to see one where it's a core mechanic. Also, the healing mechanic in Lies of P is kind of neat. Basically, it functions like an Estus flask, but when you run out of charges, you can recharge an additional use by landing enough hits. This creates scenarios where
And see, that's what it makes it. Oh, that was a good friend. But that's what makes this game a little bit different. Like like if you tweak it a little bit. Like I love that. I wish they had that in some more in FromSoftware game. I wish they saw this and was like, oh yeah, we could use this. Like if you hit enough enemies, you will build up some health, and you will just get a health, and it really helps like when you're exploring.
where a comeback is always possible during a boss fight if you play well enough. And yeah, I basically found myself using all of my healing on every boss fight, so it came up more than you might think. So there are more quirks to the combat, but I hope I've painted a picture of how this game has its own identity, even if you look at it from a purely mechanical level. It's not just another Souls-like with no new ideas being brought to the table. Take it from someone who's played a lot of these games. I definitely don't always get the impression of a strong identity when playing Souls-likes. Let's move on and talk about level design. For game developers, you have the best Souls-like combat system in the world, but your game will live or die by its level design. And I've seen so many games not pull this part off. I don't think everyone realizes just how much heavy lifting level design does for these games. Even when
Yeah.
looking at FromSoft's own games, the level design is absolutely critical for these games being as fun as they are. One of the biggest reasons for this is that regardless of the spin you put on it, Souls-like combat is inherently very simple. You'll be repeating the same attacks and dodges over and over. Therefore,
Mm-hmm.
it's necessary that these games have a wide variety of different enemy types, and B, a variety of different encounter types.
Yeah.
Basically, imagine a game where you keep fighting the same enemies one-on-one over and over again. This is a recipe for a game that will quickly get monotonous. And if you pay attention, you'll notice that FromSoft is typically very good at avoiding this. And since they were taking extremely thorough.
Yeah. Now the game design level wasn't like. Well, I don't lie. I feel like other than other than Elden Ring, I think this Lies of P game design was probably was up there. I love the game design, and I think more so than anything, Lies of P like the shortcuts that you get because Elden Ring you kind of like you go from grace to grace, and it's kind of it may be a couple of like shortcuts in there, but in Lies of P the shortcuts like that was almost like that was like one of the best rewards. Like, oh, I got a shortcut, so I don't have to go through this again. Especially when you're doing like linear type games. So I did enjoy that.
Thorough notes, the devs of LiesOfP avoid this too. I was consistently presented with encounters that put pressure on me. One of the simplest examples of this concept is when an enemy is attacking you with a range attack, but there are one or more enemies between you and them. Do you focus on the closer enemy while avoiding the range attacks, or do you run past them to take out the range enemy? Either way,
No,
there's
I'm
pressure
going
and
after the
choice
ranged
involved,
enemy.
and it makes for an interesting
It's
encounter.
probably best to
Let's
go
talk
after
about
the
a
ranged
variation of this
enemy.
concept of mixing up enemies. Like maybe you need to fight multiple of this old enemy at once, or maybe you need to fight on a narrow walkway, or maybe there's an ambush after you pick up an item, or maybe there's two dudes with flamethrowers coming at you while bombs are being thrown from.
I hated this part because once you get up there at the top, it is a big, huge clown that took me like 10 tries before I actually beat it.
Further up. Lots of possibilities. And that's just the enemy component of level design. You also have the physical geometry and map layout of level design. And again, yes, there's not much to say beyond this being executed on the level of a FromSoft game. Levels wrap around on themselves, there's shortcuts, verticality, secrets, that type of thing. And that's to say nothing of the beautiful environments and vistas and graphical fidelity on display here. It's top-notch stuff. And the end result is that if you told me FromSoft made this game, I'd probably believe you. The only notable
Yeah,
deviation is that LiesOfP is more linear than any of the FromSoft games, arguably too linear. There are still side paths, but there's fewer than you'd see from something like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, and there's pretty much always a clear path forward to the boss. To be clear, I think this is fine and works well for LiesOfP, but it's the main
yeah. I think if anything, I think there should be lots of people thing doing it like that, because I did enjoy like kind of going. And then if you wanted to explore, which I mean, if you like Souls like games, you probably gonna want to explore. It is like little paths you can deviate, like go off of, and then you can kind of like look around. But it'll always be kind of like just like one room. It doesn't like loop around or something like that. But yeah, no, I love like the linear setup of this game, because once you kill a boss, it's like you don't have to think like, what did they tell me? What clue did they give me on where I need to go? It just automatically opens up the next area.
thing that stands out if you're strictly comparing it one to one with FromSoft. And I did find myself wishing for moments where I could get lost or stumble across some really big secret or lengthy detour. One of my favorite things in most FromSoft games is how there are so many huge secrets that are optional and easy to miss. With how well the devs of Lies of P nailed the environments and the atmosphere, I think this game would have benefited from letting you engage with it more in the form of more exploration. Now, let's take a few minutes to focus on the bosses of this game and discuss combat more so I can go into more detail. To
Hmm.
reiterate, some of the bosses in this game are extremely difficult, and while the difficulty is comparable to Sekiro, some bosses push past that in even more difficult territory. This is the type of game where you'll get beat so bad on your first attempt that it makes you sit up in your chair and think, damn, how am I going to do this? And then you'll die a couple more times, finally get it, and then find out that was just
See, I was on the opposite end of this. Sometimes when I would fight a boss, I would get I would do really good on the first time, and then after that, when I'm trying to like learn the technique, I would do horrible. Like sometimes I would get to like a second phase on fighting a boss on the first try, and then after that, and then after the fighting it like six more times and losing, I didn't even make it to the second phase. I don't know. It just I guess it just depends.
it's phase one. Get ready for another health bar. I expect this to be the most polarizing aspect of the game, and I've already read quite a few opinions from critics and other people who think this game is too
This boss
difficult. I
was.
think that's a fair
I thought
point
this
to
boss
make,
was fair.
especially in
It wasn't
context
too
of
hard.
difficulty spikes
He
and
do
things like
he do
boss
keep
parries
attacking a
designed to
lot
keep you
though.
parried enough. But what I like about this game is that it demands you actually learn the whole fight. Like, by the time I had beaten a boss, most of the time I learned how to
This
respond
boss
to
took me a
every single
while.
attack. And then it became a dance of executing properly. Very few Souls likes demand this level of performance. Hell, you can fumble your way through plenty of FromSoft boss fights without really needing to learn the whole fight. And that's okay, but I like the challenge P presents you with. And for someone like me, who's pretty experienced at these games, but not amazing by any means, it was refreshing to really be pushed. Because despite it all, I know some people are going to disagree, I don't consider this game unfair. Pretty much every time I died, I was like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Making a game difficult isn't that hard. There's plenty of bullshit you can introduce. But to make a game difficult in a way that still feels fair with clearly telegraphed attacks and where players will keep trying after a dozen failed attempts, that's a challenge. And I feel like Neo was nailed it here. There are mix-ups and tricky timings with slow and fast versions of certain attacks. Puppet enemies will often confuse you at first with disjointed attack animations. It feels
Yeah.
like every enemy in the game has
I feel like some of the parry windows is difficult only because it depends on what enemy it is. Like this one, like he held the swing, he held it longer than like normally they would, so it can kind of throw you off. But I think that's parkour for it being a different type of enemy, so they would swing different, like just a different fight style.
multiple attacks with huge windups perfectly designed to throw you off. All this is very tough, but never genuine bullshit. Or at least 95% of the time it wasn't bullshit. Could some of the elite enemies and bosses with long attack chains be toned down just a bit? And would the game be better with just one or two extra frames from the parry window? Maybe, yeah, but
Yeah,
as it
give me some
stands, it's
frames for
still
that
very
parry window.
doable and fun if you're into challenging games. I'll come back to the topic in a bit, but let's keep discussing boss mechanics for now. Despite the difficulty, the developers aren't completely heartless, and they added an optional NPC summon to
Yeah,
boss fights to help. In theory, I like
that's another thing too. If the game gives you help, it's okay to use it. Even if it's just to learn the boss attack, it's okay to use it. I know people frown upon that, like, no, you gotta do it by yourself. Which I mean it is more satisfying when you win, whenever you're doing it by yourself. But at the end of the day, use whatever helps.
Like this approach to difficulty, and similar to what FromSoft does. For some of the fights, I'd say your summon is somewhat helpful as they keep aggro off of you, but for the really tough ones, that summon will almost never.
Now that's one thing I will say about Elden Ring DLC. If you summon in Elden Ring DLC, that boss does not care about that summon. It will come straight for you. It does not like those bosses do not lure your like the NPCs that you bring in. They do not lure the boss aggro. Now in this game, it does. In Elden Ring, the original Elden Ring, the first one, it does that too. But in the DLC, they fixed that. They were like, no, this boss is coming directly at you.
Never survive in a phase two of a fight. And that's usually where you need the most help. So regardless of if you choose to use summons or not, you're still mostly on your own, and you will still need to learn the fight. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a patch that buffs your summon in the coming days or
I think this
weeks
game
to
is a
help
little
you
bit
actually
more
beat the
fair
fight.
on it.
Boss fights also
The
involve
boss will give you
staggers,
time
both big and
between
small. Small
the
staggers can be
NPC
simple,
and you.
simply stumbling for a moment and then you get an extra hit in. And the big staggers are the ones I mentioned earlier where you need to land a charge.
The noise that this game makes once you hit them and you get ready for like a crit, it is so satisfying. I can hear it now, even though they're not playing it in this video. I can still hear it.
Heavy attack once your health bar turns white. While it mostly felt fair for me with my dexterity build, I think the window for big staggers can be punishingly short for strength builds and slower weapons, and there were times where it actually felt impossible to land the hit. If you don't land that charge heavy attack, you simply miss out on getting that big critical hit. And missing that big critical hit is a bigger deal than you might think, because in addition to not doing that extra damage, you also don't remove the recoverable health from the boss. Because that's another
Oh,
mechanic
you
I
better
haven't
get
mentioned
that.
until
Yeah,
now.
you better get it.
Office
I
slowly
was gonna
retain
say.
a faded portion of their health bars over time, kind of similar to how you recover health. And only critical hits from staggers completely remove their recoverable health. This health regen mechanic might sound annoying, but I think it's slow
I
enough
didn't even
you
know
might not
that.
even notice it. And I think it's
Yeah, I
even
was gonna say
perfect
I
to
didn't even know that.
discourage you from playing in a slow and tedious way where you get maybe one hit in at a time and then run away. Instead, you're encouraged to keep up the aggression at all times. I think this is a clever way to subtly push players into that playstyle. Next, a nitpick I have is about how this game still commits to the run back for boss fights. Sekiro and Elden Ring largely ditched this part of the game, and I think it was for the best. I can see the merit of it in some cases, but for Lies of P, it just felt like a hold.
But most of the time, for it was like this one. All you got to do is run straight and like dodge the. I think it's like one enemy that come down the stairs and then you just run straight. So they did it kind of like it was always like easy once you got to the boss to just keep on going. I don't remember just ever having a problem having to run around enemies to get back to the boss fight.
Over from Dark Souls without really adding to the experience. And this is a game where most boss fights are going to take quite a few attempts, so it gets annoying. One critique I want to address is the claim that there are too many two-phase boss fights. And when I say two-phase, I'm specifically talking about how the boss will transform into basically a new fight after you deal enough damage or clear the first health bar. I'm torn on this because I think the fights are very well done.
I didn't feel that way when I first played the game. Now that I think about it, I think it was like a lot of two boss fights. But when I first played it, I didn't think too much of it.
I'm sympathetic to the idea of boss fatigue. For example, fighting the first phase repeatedly because the second phase keeps kicking your ass can be incredibly frustrating. Since all you really want to do is just learn the moveset for phase two, but you slowly need to get there each time by repeating phase one, which you may have mastered already. So yeah, not sure where I personally land on this topic. Just wanted to bring it up and let you know I'm mixed on it.
That's kind of the thing where you say that's just like
Despite that, I really want to stress that overall.
when it comes to this attack, I died so much. I used to run in a corner and let the lightning like keep striking the corner so it wouldn't hit me, it would hit a wall. And then I realized, yeah, I could just parry all of those. And then it was because if it's a perfect parry, you'll gain your health back. So just another tip for you.
Overall, the boss fights are fantastic. These are some of the most challenging
Like
and
he
creative
dodged in it. I could not
bosses I've
dodge it
seen
for
in the
some
genre
reason.
as a whole.
I had
And
to
some
run
of
in
them
a
actually
corner.
bring new ideas to the table too. You got stuff like having a boss that's essentially two bosses stuck together and two different fights depending on which side
Oh,
you're
that look like
on.
yeah, that's the
We're doing
sword
the
I use.
classic Ornstein and Smo, but there's three different Ornsteins. While many of these bosses reside within the territory of familiar, if you play a few games in the genre, there's still some new stuff here, which I think is pretty commendable. I want to make another side note about the difficulty,
Oh,
and I
this
might
another
repeat
two
myself
boss
a bit,
fight.
but I think it's important I include this since this really is the deal breaker for a lot of people. Yes, this game is very difficult. I totally get it. However, I've been reading some takes from people calling for major overhauls to the entire combat system. Like, for example, massively increasing the parry window or letting you animation cancel any attack.
If you get those little quartz, you can. It's actually it's one of them where you can do it where you can increase the parrying window. I believe.
Totally get where they're coming from, and I empathize with the frustration that spurred these suggestions, but I think it's the wrong call. Like I said earlier, yeah, maybe a
Now, as far as the difficulty, it don't matter now because they got an easy, medium, and hard mode, so it should be good.
very slight buff to parries would be good, and maybe some minor adjustments to certain attacks could reduce some friction, but nothing completely game changing. This game was clearly meticulously designed, and choices like attacks not being canceled
This was probably
or
the hardest
not
boss
being
for me, I
relatively
think,
dull or not
in
mistakes due to accidents.
the
They're just
normal game.
different from what a lot of people are used to, and that's why I hesitate on agreeing with calls for major changes to the combat system. Some of these suggestions will have cascading effects that would disrupt the whole balance of the game. The main piece of advice I give is don't let your preconceptions about what this game is or your assumptions about what this game wants from you get in the way of your own success. More specifically, while perfect parrying is a central mechanic, it's not the only mechanic, and you don't need to parry every single attack. The way I've seen people talk about this game, it feels like they're treating it like the sequel to Sekiro, and that's a mistake. Guarding and dodging are still extremely useful. Like when people complain about an enemy doing an attack chain of 7 attacks in a row and saying how it's impossible to parry them all and not rewarding enough, yeah, I get it. But guess what? You never actually needed to parry them all. In fact, on the really quick attacks, it's better to not even attempt parrying. Use dodges, use parries, use
Yeah.
angle arts. Those are really strong. Fuck it, use consumables. They're
Thank
actually packed.
emphasis on that. Use consumables. That will get you through a lot of this. Like, and use the right one, not just putting fire on everything. But like with this enemy, fire probably would have worked better. But I'm just saying, like, use the information that you get between like items that you pick up. Use that in order to get it's because normally you don't need it for just like normal exploration when you get in there. But once you get to the boss, you will need those consumables.
Impactful. Use everything. You still might not succeed, but trust me, keeping an open mind
Oh,
is
so
a
you
core
can
tenet
dodge
of this
that.
game. The overall response
I
reminds me
must just
heavily
suck.
of when Sekiro first came out, and also when the Neo games
But
came
yeah,
out,
it's
and
just
how they
best to
stood
just
out
go
from
ahead and
everything else
parry all
because
of
they
those
treated them like
lightning
Souls
shots.
games. Some people are playing it like it's Bloodborne, some people are playing it like it's Sekiro. Both groups are wrong. You need to play it like it's LiesOfP and meet the game where it's at. I
Yeah.
understand how everything I'm saying might come across as me just saying
And
this
don't
because
miss
a bunch
those
of you out
parrying
there will
windows,
disagree,
man.
but that's really not my
Do
goal.
not miss
And I'm
that.
open to discussion and even changing my mind. I really just want people to succeed and have fun. That's it. Next, I want to go over a list of major and minor critiques I have that I haven't gone into yet. First,
Let's
as much as
hear
I
it.
praised the weapon assembly system earlier, I think there's one very questionable design choice that seriously brings it down. Every weapon blade is capable of two different swing types, slash and stab, but they're usually only proficient at one. This is denoted by an equal sign for the swing type the blade is proficient in, and a down arrow for the swing type it's not proficient in. Side note, this is incredibly easy to miss from a UI perspective. If it
Yeah,
was up
because
to me, I would have had a
this is my first time hearing about this. I did not know this.
green up arrow and a red down arrow to make this feature unmissable. Anyway, the reason this is questionable is that it seriously limits customization. Suddenly, sticking a hammerhead on a rapier handle gets a damage penalty, and the only reason I can think of why they made this decision is because they wanted the game to be more realistic. But fuck man, making wacky weapons is the best part of this game. Let me poke enemies with a hammer, let me swing my spear like a sword. Lean into that. Genuinely, if they simply removed this damage penalty mechanic, there would be twice as many viable customization options, with the added bonus of us getting to see more silly shit. Also, I bet a huge portion of the
Now I think they
audience
need to
never
keep this
noticed this
mechanic.
and were unknowingly lowering their damage by a significant amount. Next,
Yeah,
in addition to leveling up, you have access to your P organ, and yes, it's actually called that. It functions as a skill tree unless you unlock new abilities and passive buffs.
I just call it quartz. But yeah,
I think this is cool in theory, but it's extremely frustrating that core abilities like the ability to chain dodges or do a rolling get up attack are locked behind progression and technically optional. These moves seriously should have just been part of your base moveset for your character.
I I don't agree with that. I like that you can customize even that aspect of the game. Like you don't have to do it. But I think people kind of overlook this. And then when you get later in the playthrough, you kind of like, cause some people just kind of just put it in there and just get whatever. But yeah, you do need to read these and see which one is best fits your playstyle. It'll help you out too.
Character, especially when several complaints about the overall feel of the game get addressed once you have them. Like for real, if anything gets patched with this game, just give players these abilities from the start. Lastly, this is less a critique and more an observation, but the bloodstain recovery system is kind of interesting. I haven't seen other people mention this, likely because they didn't notice it, and I myself didn't notice it until halfway through the game. Basically, anytime you're hit on the way back to your bloodstain to recover your souls, you lose a chunk of your total recoverable amount. However, if you kill the enemy that hit you, that amount you lost becomes recoverable once again. I feel like the intention here was to maybe discourage or punish running past enemies as you try to get back to your bloodstain, and instead encourage you to take your time. However, I still ran past enemies.
To be honest, I didn't even know that. I didn't know you lost health or something like that.
most of the time anyway, with no issues. So yeah, neat idea, but I wonder if it could have been adjusted to make it more of a factor in the gameplay. With the critiques out of the way, I want to go over a bunch of things I liked that I also haven't mentioned until now. I like how your outfit is independent from your defense stats. Do
I feel like that. Oh no, I do like that too. Like that the outfits are independent from your defense stats. But I don't know. I feel like I want more like customization as far as like the outfits, like mixing and matching, or just more outfits in general.
do still have equipment and equip load burden to contend with, but the game frames it as internal puppet parts, and as such, it's completely hidden and free.
And another thing too. Sorry, I keep stopping the video. Another thing too. I wish that the ambulance didn't take up so much as far as like weight. Like some of these ambulance, you put them on and you'll be like heavy rolling.
You have to wear whatever outfit you want. I like how heavy and light attacks seamlessly chain into each other. This is something I see a lot of Souls likes ignore. The speed and utility of heavy attacks caused me to actually use them quite a bit, and I found myself using the entire moveset of my weapon on a regular basis. I like how you can equip special grind skills to your grinder. This gives you access to weapon buffs once per rest, and because stats
Shout out to the grindstones. I needed those.
it adds an extra layer of customization and variety regardless of your build. I also like how great the voice acting is in this game. They got some really talented people, like, for example, Anthony Howe voicing Geppetto, who you might know as the voice of Margit in Elden Ring.
Boy, I do not like Geppetto. I clocked him from the beginning. I knew he was evil.
Always remember that you're precious to me, even when I ask you to do something dangerous.
I like the consistently good sound design and visual feedback across the experience. Seeing the sparks fly from a successful parry never gets old, and touches like this go a long way to make actions you'll be repeating countless times continue to feel satisfying.
That sound that you make once you stab
Explode
is the best sound in the world.
hit is fantastic. Lastly, I really like the soundtrack. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Especially the records you can unlock and play in the hub area.
I don't know about the records that you can unlock, but that is how you get the golden lot. If you play all those records, if you find all of them and play them, it can help you out whenever you want to get the golden lot. But I do like the soundtrack for this, like the hotel. Yeah, like the hotel theme music. I do love that. Not, I don't know about this one. He tripping on this.
Now, I want to take a minute to discuss the overall critical reception of this game and why it's making me feel like I'm going just a little crazy. I want to preface this by saying I'm not trying to discredit anyone. These are all just video game opinions.
I got this thing to handle on this
Reviews
sword.
first don't do
I
the
never
job
fought with a
capturing
sword like that.
it once. But it blows my mind that LiesOfP is receiving about the same level of critical success in types of discussions as something like, for example, Mortal Shell, another Soulslike. I apologize to Mortal Shell. I'm not trying to single you out. It was made by a smaller team, so it's a great accomplishment for what it is. But Mortal Shell is what I consider simply a decent Soulslike. It's fun, has some really cool
I never
ideas,
played
but it also has some serious design issues and shoddy execution that make me hesitate in giving it a full recommendation. The truth of the matter is, LiesOfP is worlds apart from something like Mortal Shell. I'm not satisfied with calling LiesOfP just decent because I think the developers have achieved something.
Nah, it was 9.5, 10 out of 10 to me, but I'll settle for 9.5. It was a great game.
Here. This is the real deal. And as one of the largest voices in the community, I feel compelled to make that as clear as I can. It really is on that level that I reserve for actual FromSoft games and stuff like Neo 2. And while I can see some people not agreeing because they think it's too similar to FromSoft, or too difficult, or unfair, or something else, that doesn't change my personal feelings toward the game. It's just a really good game. So yeah, Lies of P is not reinventing the wheel. It's not earth-shatteringly new. It's probably not going to make you feel anything you haven't felt before. It's familiar, but it brings more
If
than
you love Soul games, I do recommend playing.
new ideas to the table and a package with FromSoft levels of polish and execution. It's got a gorgeous world and a compelling story, and it commits so hard to the idea of Bloodborne Pinocchio that you'll forget how silly the premise is as you get sucked into its world. Its crushing difficulty in ways it mixes up the genre will undoubtedly push some people away. But for those who stick it out and are willing to learn, you're going to be in for one of the best games the Souls-like genre has to offer. I know it's probably not on most people's schedules given how packed this year has been with incredible games, but this one's
Nah, definitely check it out.
saying is I'm incredibly excited to see what these devs do next. And unlike Pinocchio, I'm not lying. Thanks for watching. I really hope I did this game justice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
No, this was good. I really enjoyed this video. This was a really good video. But yeah, if you love Souls like games, I recommend playing Lies of P. It was wonderful. I love this game. Well, after I did my original playthrough, I didn't get a chance to like go through it as far as like the pros and cons to it. But I did love the game. I think I played it probably. I did the DLC once, and then I probably played Lies of P, the main story, probably like 3 times. But yeah, overall, it was a good game. And if you enjoy content like this, make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.